Hello, friends, and welcome back to Writing While Distracted. I'm Brenda Murphy, your neurospicy writing coach. I'm glad you've joined me today, where we're going to talk about writers and the 10,000-hour concept of mastery. So stay tuned. If you're not familiar with the 10,000-hour concept or theory, if you're not familiar with the 10,000-hour concept of mastery, the idea came from a 1993 study conducted by Anders Ericsson and his team. And then it was promoted by Malcolm Gladwell in his best-selling book, Outliers, that if you practiced something for 10,000 hours on average, you would become a master in whatever that was, whatever that craft was, or whatever that skill set was. The problem is that like a lot of things that are simply repeated without an understanding of what they are, it has led to a lot of frustration because people believe that if they just put in the time, they'll get better. And that is the myth of 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours of subpar practice is not going to get you anywhere. 10,000 hours of just putting in the hours isn't going to improve anything. So that is the myth of 10,000 hours, that you can just do 10,000 hours of something and that you'll get better. The reality is, without focused practice, you won't get any better. There are 3 keys to improving using the 10,000-hour theory, and this is the part that most people leave out when they talk about it. So for writers, how does that apply? There are 3 parts to improving any skill. First, you need a goal. A goal is something you can aim for and measure your progress against. Second, you need deliberate practice. And that means working on the stuff that doesn't come easy, working on the stuff that's challenging, working on the things that you may not be naturally good at or particularly talented in. Talent is often a very confused expression. Because you say, oh, they're so talented. That means that for the same amount of time they put in, they will make more progress than you. If you have less talent, you're going to have to work harder to get where someone else might get in an hour. It might take you 5 hours or 10 hours or 100 hours to achieve the same level of skill. But in any craft, any skill, deliberate practice will make you better. What do I mean by deliberate practice? I mean practice that is guided by feedback. That means you can't always see the things that you're not good at. So you need someone else to help you with that. Depending on what kind of feedback you need, it can come from any number of sources. For writers, this could be feedback from your beta readers. This could be feedback from your alpha readers. This could be feedback from editors. It could be feedback that you get in the form of constructive reviews. Or if it's something you notice pops up all the time in a review. And all of this came about, this idea for doing this podcast came about because I've had so many conversations with writers who are very frustrated, and they tell me, I've been writing for years, but I'm not making any progress. And when I dig a little deeper and I ask them what do they mean by progress, they usually tell me something like they want to get an agent or a traditional publishing deal or hit a bestseller list. And the problem with those goals are that they're beyond your control. You can't control what an agent wants or whether readers buy your book. You can't control your ability to hit a bestseller list. That is made up of so many different things. And if you dig a little deep into what constitutes what books get on bestseller lists, it will probably become very clear to you that it is not about how well a book is written. So those aren't goals that you can really measure your progress against because you can't control them. Goals have to be something that you yourself can control. So what can you control? You can control your craft. You can decide to work on something that maybe you're not so good at. Maybe you work on pacing or dialogue or character development or world building. Those areas will have a direct payoff on the quality of your writing. For example, when I first started writing, my biggest struggle was structure. And I'm sure there's some people out there that would argue I still struggle with it, but I'm much better than what I used to be. My brain runs about 1,000 miles an hour in 1,000 different directions. It is how I am wired. It is a function of my ADHD. It is how a lot of people who are neurodivergent think. It's how our brains work. We don't necessarily work in a linear fashion. Trying to corral all of those ideas into a coherent story was overwhelming and frustrating. And my discovery of mind mapping and learning about mind mapping came about actually because I was taking a class on how to teach children with special needs. My undergraduate degree is in education, and that was a class that I had to take. And I'm so grateful that I did because I learned so many ways to help teach myself and also help teach other people that may struggle with a number of different things as far as not learning like everybody else. But the glorious thing that I learned in that class was all about mind mapping. I'd never heard of it. And if you've never heard of it, I highly recommend it. And I will link a blog post, an extensive blog post that I did on mind mapping and how you can use it to guide your writing below in the podcast notes. So if you want to do a deeper dive in that, you can. But essentially what you do is you get a piece of paper and you dump out all of those ideas that you have about your story on a piece of paper in no particular order or fashion. You just write them down wherever you want on the paper. And then you go back and draw lines between the ideas. And using those lines and connections, you then can create sort of a loosey-goosey outline. Some people can create a very structured outline. I don't really write from an outline. I write from a scene list because I don't always have the details nailed down in my story. I make them up as I go along because I'm somewhere between a plotter and a pantser. And that's just how I create. It may work for you, it may not. But again, I'll link that post below so you can do a little deeper dive in it. That learning tool was my first taste of deliberate practice as a writer. I wasn't just writing my drafts. I was focusing on the structure and studying, reading so many stories, trying to figure out how they worked. Getting feedback on my writing. I had beta readers. I had other writers that were further along the writing path than I am. And I am ever grateful for those people who agreed to read my early work and help me understand where I could make my writing stronger and where my structure fell apart and where it took cliff dives. And by tearing my drafts apart and putting them back together again, over time, my books got stronger. And when I go back and read my early books, which I have to do sometimes when I'm writing another book in a series, I can see how I've improved. And that makes me happy. And it'll make you happy too if you do this deliberate practice. When I finally felt like I understood structure, I moved on to character development. I wanted to write characters that I have read, the kind of characters that you just couldn't wait to read more about, the kind of characters that make you turn the page because you want to see what those people are doing next. I studied with teachers I admired. I read everything I could and applied it to my next book, which was a double six. And I wrote that during NaNoWriMo when it was a thing before it collapsed into the horrific mess that occurred. And if you know, you know, and if you don't know, if you look it up, it'll really bother you. So maybe don't do that. Double Six won the Goldie in 2020 for erotica. And what I loved about that is that I felt like that practice had deliberately affected the quality of that book. Now, again, I can't control whether a book wins an award, but I can control the quality of a book that I submit for an award. So again, deliberate practice, and it can pay off. And each book going forward, I've chosen different things to focus on when I feel like I've accomplished something. And that is what I want you to take away from this. You can't control external success. You can't control agents, publishers, or sales, but you can control how you approach your writing practice. Writing is a craft, and crafts can be learned and improved and refined. For neurodivergent, neurospicy folks out there, this is something that if you've got hyperfocus, you have a leg up on everybody. If you're one of those people that becomes obsessive, what I'm asking you to do is to become obsessive about improving or hyper-focused on improving your craft. And that's how you accomplish deliberate practice. And that's how you improve. So if you're feeling stuck in your writing, you feel like you just can't get anything going, or you're just not happy with the quality of it, pick one thing to focus on. Maybe it's dialogue or character development or pacing. Study that thing. Read books by people that you admire. Read books by people whose writing you want to emulate, not copy, but steal like an artist, emulate that. Bring those concepts in. How do they make their characters so unforgettable? How do they make their settings come alive? How do they make it so you stay up all dang night reading a darn book because you can't bear to close it because you have to know what do they do? How do they build a book so that you cannot close the cover? You stay up all night reading it because you have to find out how the story ends. Those are the books you want to read. Those are the things you want to really take apart to figure out how they did it. It's almost like magic tricks that aren't so magic once you understand how something is done. And that's the beautiful part about writing. You can find out how something is done. You may not be able to do it as well as they ever do it, but you can improve. And that's what I want you to hold on to. You can improve. So if you're feeling stuck, pick that one thing, apply what you learned to your next project. So pick the one thing, study it, practice it, and get feedback on that thing. Ask specific questions about the thing. If you're working on pacing, ask your beta readers, could you please pay attention to pacing? Could I improve it? What do you think? If you're working with an editor, same thing. Ask deliberate questions to get the feedback that you need for deliberate practice. Applying what you learn to your next project or ongoing project is how you get better. Not by logging 10,000 random hours, but by being deliberate about how you use your time. And time for all of us is tight. So don't waste it doing the same thing over and over and over again and wondering why you're not improving. And please don't sell yourself short, especially if you're neurodivergent, especially if you had struggled in school. I know that in your head, you have a lot of discouraging voices that tell you all the time, you're never going to be good enough, you're never going to get better, all of the ugly things that inner critic says to you, because we faced a lot of that in school. Some of us were told we were lazy. Some of us were told we were stupid. Some of us were told we would never amount to anything. And you know what? Those people were wrong, because you can absolutely improve. Ignore those voices. Ignore the discouraging voices that you may hear from people in your life. You have stories worth telling. You can improve. And the only way to get better at writing is to write. And I've said this before, not think about it all the time, not plan about it all the time, but to actually write. Because you can talk all day about it, you can think all day about it, you can plan all day about it, but until you actually apply your butt to the seat of a chair and put words into your computer or onto a piece of paper or dictate them into a writing program, nothing is going to change. So what do I want you to do with all of this information? I want you to pick one thing. I want you to set a goal for that, for improvement in that one thing. And that may feel nebulous because, believe me, it's not as hardcore as I'm going to write 1,000 words a day or I'm going to finish this draft by the end of November. But you can figure out how to set goals for nebulous concepts. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Set a goal. Improve structure of my books. Have less comments about structure. Have a book that actually has an ending that makes sense instead of a cliff dive into an abyss of, I don't know what the heck happened with these characters. You can set those goals. Set the goal, do your deliberate practice, and then get your feedback. And keep working. You get to define what success looks like for you. And if that success means that you now have a character that people want to get t-shirts of, or they write fan letters to, or any of the other 100 things, like maybe people write you letters and say, please write this character in another book. That's success. That can be success for you. Or maybe you're just happy with that character. And I'm all about choosing success markers that you are in control of achieving, getting a draft finished, writing those 1,000 words, doing that 10,000 hours of practice. You are in control of those measures and markers of success. I hope you take encouragement from today's podcast to make a plan, do the work, and get your story out there. Work on it. People need your words. People need your story. Until next time, take care. Thanks for spending time with me today. If this episode has helped you, or if you'd like to share what you're working on improving right now, drop me a comment or send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas about future podcasts, things you'd like me to take a little deeper dive into, please drop those in the comments below too. And as always, stay tuned, stay inspired, and keep writing, friends.